Was my personal situation with my sister, who I mentioned, and my aunt, particularly my sister, who at age 12 would be running away from home, and my first experiences of homelessness were actually looking for my kid sister on the streets of Melbourne. I had this deep desire somewhere in me to try and help and to do something. And so, after an extraordinary season of conducting Mythologia with Sydney Dance Company, with Graham Murphy as part of the Olympic Cultural Festival, just down the road here in the Capitol Theatre, we were the Sydney Gatesman Choir. This is very significant. They were the first openly gay organisation to ever have been involved in an Olympic game cultural festival ever. So we did 13 performances of this amazing work that was written for us by Carl Vine and with the extraordinary Graham Murphy and the dancers. I then decided to take a trip over to North America because I wanted to check out what the choirs were doing over there. The whole gay choral movement started in San Francisco in the 80s, that coming out of the AIDS epidemic in particular in San Francisco, with San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, who must be going on for 40 years now, and inspired this movement around the whole world for people to come together and to give our community a voice, which had never had a voice. And I was so proud to do the work that we were doing with Sydney Gay Lesbian Choir, particularly out in the broader community as well, and taking our work and our music out to the broader community. It was such a powerful time. But I got stuck in a snowstorm in Calgary on the other side of the Rocky Mountains, drinking lots of red lemonade for a few days. And the friends I was staying with me handed me this Canadian Reader's Digest. And in it was an article about the Montreal Homeless Men's Choir. Bing, the light went on. The work that I had been doing in Sydney, conducting Sydney Gay Lesbian Choir, and the sense of community that I found really for the first time in my life with this group of people. We hear the word community talked about a lot, don't we? But I had never really experienced that true sense of what it felt to belong and to have the support of amazing people that became my friends and still are all these years on, and that sense of community. So I decided to come back to Sydney. I'd met Matt only 2 weeks before on the cruise ship. When I was in America, we got to meet up. He came from just outside Chicago in Illinois, so I was able to change my routine, my itinerary, and we spent some time together then. 3 months later, he arrived with 2 suitcases and had sold everything in his life. No pressure, Jonathon. 22 years later, I can say it was a good move. But I came back to Sydney and I started the very first choir for people experiencing homelessness and disadvantage just up the road at Paddington Uniting Church on Oxford Street 22 years ago. So that choir is in fact now in their 22nd year, and one of the choir members, Terry, is sitting right here.
I didn't think you spotted me.
I didn't. I can see you, mate. I've been wanting to acknowledge you.
I thought I was incognito.
And it's so lovely to have you here and to be part.
Kel says hi.
Hi.
He knows you're here.
Some of the original guys are still there.
Kelvin.
Yeah. Just an extraordinary time. Here, this is the article, A Song in Our Hearts. This is the very first rehearsal of Sydney Street Choir. There's Matt. There's me up the back. I don't know whether you can see this. There's Alan.
Yep.
There, who's still with the choir.
He is.
He has an identical twin brother who
John,
sings with the choir as well. So this amazing journey began. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And people said to me, how are you going to get people to turn up, if they're living on the streets? And so I worked with a lot of the homeless charities here who would say, I know such and such, he's really good at karaoke, I heard somebody playing a guitar, and eventually the word got around. And we started rehearsing at Paddington Uniting Church. Then we moved to Edward Eagle Lodge, just up here in Taylor Square, and then we rehearsed, when I finished, we were at Salvation Army, just around the corner here. So this area has, I feel like I'm time warped when I come back. It has so many amazing memories. And at the same time, I created Sydney Street Choir. I had, in those couple of years afterwards, I decided to leave my directorship of Sydney Gay Lesbian Choir I spent 5 extraordinary years with them. And I also set up another group of choirs, because you can never have too many choirs in your life. Let's go to the next picture. What have we got here? Oh, here's some more articles. So they were starting to hit, the Australian Reader's Digest was doing articles on the fact that I'd read about, the Montreal Homeless Men's Choir and this kind of word had got. And interestingly, there was a very small production company that were interested in doing a documentary on Sydney's street choir, which kind of never happened. They pitched it to the ABC, they didn't want it. Pitched it to SBS, they didn't want it. That kind of fell by the wayside, and I got in with working with the choir. But at the same time, I decided to set up my own group of choirs under the banner of Australian Pop Choirs. So let's have a little look here. There were the adult choir, Australian Pop Choir, Angela singing that. There were Pop Kids, Maddie singing that. And a young guy sitting right here who was 5 when I first did 20 years ago, Dylan, now is here. Let's have a look. Maybe there's Dylan. Little fella, just check, he's still got the red curls there. And I'm very thrilled. It's so lovely to see. Dylan is now a professional musician and teacher and conducting some of the musicals here in town as well too, as music director, and went on. My God, did you have a voice as a 5-year-old? It was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Along with many of the other kids who've gone on to do things, and Matt went on to do School Spectacular and do all sorts of wonderful things, and he's going to come back to his singing. He's promised me. He's a dad now, so he has other responsibilities as well too, which kind of take away from